لسعادة عبد الرحمن سيف الغرير رئيس مجلس إدارة غرفة تجارة وصناعة دبي على هذه الكلمة. السادة الحضور، لا يمكننا أن نتكلم عن الكوميسا دون أن نذكر وكالة الاستثمار الإقليمية لدول الكوميسا، هي الذراع الاستثمارية للكوميسا، والتي تعمل على استقطاب وتعزيز حركة الاستثمار المباشر إلى التكتل الاقتصادي الأكبر في القارة الأفريقية. شاركوني بالترحيب بالسيدة هبة سلامة، مدير وكالة الاستثمار الإقليمية لدول الكوميسا، فلتتفضل مشكورة.
Thank you. Your Highness, Sheikh Maktoum bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Deputy Ruler of Dubai, Prime Minister of the Republic of Uganda, Vice President of the Union of Comoros, Vice President of the Republic of Seychelles, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union, Chairperson of the COMESA Council of Ministers, Honorable Ministers, COMESA Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great honor to welcome you all to the Africa Global Business Forum. May I begin by offering our appreciation to His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum for his gracious patronage and of this prestigious forum. It is a privilege to have this opportunity to introduce such a distinguished audience to some of the most exciting investment opportunities of the business world has witnessed this century. And as a native-born African, it is also with immense pride that I offer you a landscape of opportunity under the headline, Africa is the future and the last frontier. But a word of caution, ladies and gentlemen, please do not wait for the future to arrive. You must not hesitate to venture out and grasp the extraordinary prospects of growth and profit that are presenting themselves across Africa this very moment. You must be as quick as the fastest lion. I paraphrase liberally from His Highness, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid's inspirational book, My Vision. Every morning in Africa, a lion wakes up knowing it must outrun the gazelle, or it will not survive. The moral being that it does not matter if you're a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you had better be running. Africa's commercial lions are already up and running from foundations that are solid, dynamic, and replete with promise. Not investing in Africa at this time is like missing out on Japan and Germany in the 1950s and Southeast Asia's in the 80s. So it's wise to be running towards Africa right now before it leaves you behind. And we know what happens to slow-moving gazelles who spend too much time chewing old grass. Just 13 years ago, The Economist described Africa as the hopeless continent. In December 2011, the magazine did a complete volte-face. In its cover headline, Africa Rising, the Hopeful Continent. It declared reflecting not just a change in reality, but a complete change in perception. I believe that you're here today because you perceive a continent transformed. The figures speak volumes. Our continent encompasses 7 out of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world. Our GDP growth rate averaged 6%, with consumer spending projected to $1.4 trillion by 2020. We're a market of 1 billion people, surpassed only by China and India. Our productivity growth is at least 3% a year, and we have a rate of return on FDI that has averaged 29%. Let's take a look at one of our big growth industries, agriculture. Africa holds a remarkable 60% of the world's total uncultivated arable land. To meet the world's ever-increasing demand for agriculture products, African governments are investing in distribution infrastructure and eliminating trade barriers and establishing private equity funds. Syngenta, for example, has committed to build a $1 billion business in Africa, reaching over 5 million farmers with cumulative investments of over $500 million. The development of distribution channel networks, logistics, and local production facilities. And with the growth of the ICT sector in Africa comes one of the continent's most astonishing stories. With 600 million mobile phone users, far more than in America or Europe, Africa is taking the lead in global mobile revolution. Just one example among many is Kenya's Equity Bank, which was the first in the world to offer a mobile-centric bank account. The world's ICT media has certainly been paying attention. Among them, Wired magazine, which recently declared, if you want to become extremely wealthy over the next 5 years, here's no brainer, move to Africa. Which brings me to the financial sector that is also on a sustained rise. Ladies and gentlemen, there are 23 stock markets in our continent, 18 more than just 10 years ago. According to the Invest in Africa website, as of May 2012, the stock markets of Kenya, Mauritius, Namibia, South Africa, Uganda, and Zambia had three-year returns of 27%. I'm delighted to say that one of my two home countries, Zambia, provided a notable 57% return. Not surprisingly, there are now over 200 private equity firms investing in Africa, with sub-Saharan investment reaching a healthy $1.3 billion in 2011. Furthermore, as I speak, 57 exclusively Africa-focused private equity funds are in the market, collectively seeking to raise $13.1 billion in capital commitments. On the sovereign wealth fund front, Africa has 14, of them including 3 new funds in Angola, Ghana, and Nigeria, with eminent plans to set up another in Tanzania. With this positive macroeconomic background, along with the diversification and increasing sophistication of Africa's financial products, it's not surprising that international and African players are eagerly expanding their presence throughout the continent. A snapshot of commercial banking, for instance, shows Togo's EcoBank now operating in 32 African countries, and Nigeria's United Bank of Africa in 19. Tourism is booming, to 52 million tourist arrivals in 2012 alone. That makes Africa the world's second fastest growing destination. Along with the development of increasingly sophisticated facilities, African international tour operators are diversifying their offers to an ever-widening market of tourists. The once war-torn Sierra Leone was ranked among Lonely Planet's top 10 countries to visit in 2011. Ethiopia and Senegal are fast-tracking visas, and Marriott is planning over 70 more hotels in Africa. The advisory group Africa Investment estimates the value of direct industry travel and tourism in Africa in 2010 at $54 billion, and its potential yearly value $254 billion. I know I don't have to spell out what shining investment opportunities that sector is now delivering. Africa's labor force, today estimated at 382 million, is expected to number over 500 million by 2020. That's more than any region in the world. By 2035, the continent's total labor force will be on par with the US and Europe, and about half will have received a secondary or tertiary education. In relation to infrastructure, it's estimated that $72 billion are invested every year by African governments and private sources. While air transport, ICT, irrigation, ports, power, railways, sanitation, transport, storage, and water supply are improving across the board, the opportunities remain huge. Then, as you all know, Africa is very rich in resources. Africa is a leader in quantity of world reserves of bauxite, copper, cobalt, diamond, phosphate, platinum, zinc, gold, and many more. It has nearly 10% of the world's crude oil and natural gas reserves. And with recent discoveries in Ghana, Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda, the potential is even greater. And here's another astonishing statistics. Other continents can only observe and envy a transnational project that will expand the Grand Inga hydroelectric dams in the Democratic Republic of Congo, that by 2020 could generate up to 40,000 megawatts, 80% of the electricity used in Africa. That will make it the largest power plant in the world, feeding regions as far away as South Africa, Egypt, and even Europe. Energy food for thought, don't you think? as is the fact that at this moment in Egypt, 10 international firms are competing for wind investments of $630 million. Yet these mouth-watering natural resources generate less than 32% of Africa's GDP growth. The rest is created by sectors such as manufacturing, wholesale, retail, transportation, communication, and other services. Ethiopia, a good example, though not rich in minerals, oil, and gas, nevertheless grew at an average of 11% between 2004 and 2011, thanks to public sector investment in agriculture, infrastructure, and manufacturing. Here's another roaring African success, a commodity boom driven by diversifying economies, a growing middle class of over 313 million consumers, and consumer spending breaking through $1 trillion mark. Is it any surprise that investors in Africa are now increasingly market-seeking? Giants like Walmart invested $2.4 billion for a 51% stake in South Africa's Massmart. Chinese shoe manufacturing Hujian is planning to invest $2 billion. Saab Miller is making a $2.5 billion investment in breweries, including a new $100 million plant in Nigeria. And Nestlé's 30 factories producing in 21 African countries and selling in over 50. Africa's fast-moving consumer sector clearly presents an enormous opportunity for manufacturing retailers. But I make no apology for repeating. It needs to be harnessed fast as Africa and attaché players have already moved in. On an indigenous note, 3 of the top 5 fastest-growing investors into new projects in Africa are African. Intra-Africa investments has more than doubled. Look around you, ladies and gentlemen. You'll see leaders of African corporate giants who are currently setting the pace for everyone else. The improved business and investment climate and reduction in red tape throughout the continent are benefiting not only large firms. Many African countries are building a healthy SME sector, which along with vastly enhanced infrastructure are proving to be the backbone on which a plethora of investments are being made. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here today in Dubai, the business capital of the Gulf, from which there is much to learn and with which there is much to share. The strategic and growing role of Dubai as a hub to do business in and out of Africa is clear, and its importance as a valued partner for trade and investment with Africa. The close historical trade and cultural ties which unite the United Arab Emirates and the Gulf to Africa are ever strengthening. So it's appropriate to finish where I started, on a note of sincere appreciation to His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. Our sincere thanks also to the governments of the United Arab Emirates, the government of Dubai, and Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry for co-organizing and hosting this event, to our sponsors and partners for their support to our region's far-sighted policymakers, and of course to all of you, the delegates from the global business community, to whom this forum is dedicated. Ladies and gentlemen, may I leave you with these thoughts. According to the World Bank, Africa could be on the brink of an economic takeoff, much like China was 30 years ago, and India 20 years ago. Branko Milanovic, one of their lead economists, recently declared, "Now we have a reversal of the positions between the South and the North, where the North seems to be in a mood of learning from the South. Every sign says that Africa, too, is getting on top of the game. So my earnest wish is that will accompany us on the stimulating and rewarding path along with which Africa is fast advancing." Thank you all very much.